Caress the tree.
Attention, people of Earth, I have an important announcement to make.
Quality, quantity, and variety.
ROCKFLUX.
Let's get this show on the road.
Good morning. Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale.
Thank you, folks. Thank you, everyone, for being in the studio today. We're broadcasting live, as usual, 3:52 a.m. Eastern Time on the 8th of March in the calendar year 2022. We're living in the future. For those of us who've lived in the past, and I guess the future, right?
The future. He came from the future.
I know.
Oh, no.
No, I said I know.
Oh, no.
Well, you don't get it, Doug. So the thing is, I've been thinking about this all night long. I had one of those the cat did its usual thing bothering me. He's back to semi-normal, but I think he's sick. He has to go to the vet. He's having a problem. I think he's having a problem. So keep the kitty in your thoughts. What if we're just very sophisticated robots? The human body with its bioelectric brain may well be nothing more than an intelligently designed machine. But what about consciousness? Who are we? What are we? I could have said that part 2 because I think we touched on this once before. But, having 1,000 shows and 400 shows within like the last year or so, it's hard to keep track of titles. I know we don't use this exact graphic, so who are we? What are we exactly? So I was thinking, that, thank you very much, as I do my Elvis collar here. I don't know why I got that weird accent on while I was doing it. The things you see on YouTube, he says without any explanation whatsoever. It's ridiculous.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
So, to answer, this has nothing to do with today's show, but to get it over. To answer, someone had posed a question in the comment sections, or I believe it was in the comment section of one or two of my previous shows. How much does it cost to charge a Tesla? Well, it's somewhere around $15. And, it's interesting, and it all depends on the model and all that stuff. You know what I mean? And remember, you're dealing with a battery, and it depends on what, how many people are in the car, and if everybody's, if you're using all kinds of juice and you're going, an uphill, and all that stuff, you're putting strain on the engine. It's, in other words, your kilowatt hours or however I think they calculate it like the same way they do standard power packs. Be that as it may seem fairly cheap, but, depending on the car, you could get a couple 100 miles or, even more, way more, twice that. So that's not the point of the matter. Yes, currently it is would be cheaper to get a fill-up of an electric vehicle at a Tesla station. I guess a Tesla at a Tesla station. I don't know if GM is letting you charge up there or not. I haven't seen one up close and personal to look at the, plug-in. But again, that's neither here nor there. The question that I noticed something yesterday in watching some, blather. I thought there was someone who trying to speak truth to power regarding some of the current events, which I'm not going to get into today. Today's going to be one of the classic, philosophical discussions. We're going to get into this concept of consciousness, similar to, as you would see, as I talked about in my book, the Codex, which is my previous to Then What, the hard problem of consciousness and our existence and all that happy stuff, and how that applies to what the madness that's going on today in society and ourselves, and where we are, who are we, what are we, and where the heck are we? In that show F Troop, the Indians that they used to visit that lived up the hill from the fort. Someone said, well, how'd you get your name? And they got their name, the Hakawi Indians, they were called. And they said, well, we got our name because we got, we were wandering and we got lost. And someone said, to them, who are you, or where, whatever. And they said, where the heck are we? You get it? Where the heck are we? The Hakawi. Yeah. Television. Old television humor. Politically incorrect, I guess, no less, too. Indians. So, anyway, someone asked that question, and, and that is the answer. Approximately around $15, depending on the vehicle you got. But the point is, as I've said many times on this program, that the thing is, people are talking, like the government right now has taken a stance, and the energy secretary, I believe, was saying that with the price of gas being over $4 right now currently, but over $6 in some areas, and it may go up higher in parts of the country. And the government's going to places like Venezuela and Iran to get oil. I mean, do an Iran deal into the Middle East again. I mean, it's like we're going backwards, right? Instead of, build back better, great reset. It's like, no, we're going like backwards, Anyway, and they want to buy the oil from the guy who was declared the dictator. In other words, we're fighting a dictator over in Europe. And we're talking about buying gas from two other dictators, dictators in the Middle East, which is this ridiculous king system, which is total, dictatorial. But I mean, Venezuela, you actually have a dictator that was not democratically elected, and both are aligned with Putin, by the way, just for the sake. So I want to avoid politics, but just the absurdity of it. And because I'm answering a question about gasoline, basically like automobiles, cars, fuel, energy. And so the energy secretary said, well, this is, the first step in phasing into renewable and, like electric energy. And I watched her, and she was really seriously, and I started to think, a lot of people right now who are in charge of things, they are so conditioned getting into this robotic thing that from her body language and her eyes and the way she was saying, I don't think she really understands that when you fill up a Tesla car, right? Or you turn on an electric switch, that 9 times out of 10, that energy is coming, like in our area, it's coming from coal, which you'll see that coal trucks go to feed the 2 coal electric power plants. And it's wintertime. And yesterday we had this freaky weather here, which, I mean, I could or could not talk about if I wanted to. It was 57 degrees yesterday morning. Right now it's freezing. It's 0 degrees Celsius. And it's going to stay in the 30s all day and 30s all night. So that means a lot of heating, whether you have an HVAC system that somehow, forced blown heat through gas or electric, coming through the grid, or that it's coming from those, and if it's coming from the grid in this region, I'm in the Mid-Atlantic region near the Northern Appalachian Trail area, not north, but, Mid-Atlantic, think Mid-Atlantic and Appalachians. Okay, that's it. Triangularize that, Anyway, it's cold up here. We have the 4 seasons. Okay, put it that way. We pretty much have the 4 seasons. Though it's been colder winters, than it seems winter is the longest of the seasons here now, a days, not warming, and there's still people talking about that, and it's like there's so many scientific papers, there's so much proof and evidence, and just actually factual records, temperatures, that you could just go look at and see that it's been getting colder and colder and colder and colder. And we may be looking at a mini ice age coming up shortly, which is going to wreak major havoc on food supplies, but just people staying warm. But anyway, back to the car. The car, when you fill up, and the price of it at a Tesla filling station will probably go up a lot as well, because they're not running on solar in many cases, or hydroelectric, or wind. You see, most of our electricity comes from natural gas. And depending on wherever you are and in different parts of the country, there are still many states, West Virginia, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, up in some of the plain states, where coal is still being used. And, they've come a long way with coal. I know calling it clean coal, to some people is like they can't hack that. But I'm telling you, if you pass by these coal energy plants, which kind of have towers that look similar to nuclear power plants, basically all that comes out of those plants is steam at the top. These things have been, like I talked about this a while back. One of these plants that's not too far from this location, why we'll see the trucks go up within the next hour to feed the behemoth, stoke that furnace. It was closed for a number of years because it had to be totally refitted to meet EPA standards, emissions, you see? So, a lot of people who are just like repeating something that Al Gore may have said 20 years ago, and that the UN, IPCC, which was a bunch of flakes, who were like caught passing emails saying, hey, we got to fudge those numbers. They're not matching what we're trying to say, get our narratives. They're not Then they came out with a second report to try to but the evidence on the ground, the evidence in the atmosphere just doesn't produce it, not produce it, doesn't agree with what the literature that they're trying to throw out there, their narrative, right? Doesn't support their narrative is what I was really looking for. It's 4:00 in the morning. Give me a break. So you're filling your electric car. You're not being green. Chances are it's more than likely in most parts of the country you're running on natural gas. Some of that gas was probably fracked, by the way. And in other parts of the country, you're running on a combination of, it could be natural gas or coal. But you think you're running on electric. In other words, there's these people that think electricity is some kind of different thing, on its own. It doesn't have to come from a nuclear plant or a hydroelectric plant or, fracked gas, liquefied, natural gas, coal, or even wind or solar, which they have. But the point of the matter is the windmills are being abandoned and have been, and are just starting to fall apart. And the solar panels are aging as well. And it's like the rest of our infrastructure, the grid system that's bringing the power to most people is pretty much falling apart, which brings us back to this idea, who are we, what are we, robots? Enough. I hope that answers my one of my few listeners' questions. Boy, that coffee's hot today,
The only station that matters.
Yeah.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
So I was thinking about this, the first time the cat woke me up. Maybe it was 11 o'clock last night. And then subsequently at 12 and 1 and I don't know. I rolled out of bed, I think when I asked my voice assistant, it was like 2:55 or something. I don't know. Edward Kissinger, you are just cattle. You are just useless eaters. So I was thinking about this. I'm going like, I got a little pain. I have a pain in like my side now, but it's not in the front like where the gallbladder would be. So I'm wondering if it's like more. It's almost like it could be a kidney thing. See, because the thing is, I'll tell you what I'm taking. I don't recommend anybody take anything without talking to their doctor, by the way. I'm taking some Shanka Piedra, right? Janka Piedra, which means stone breaker. And I've been taking it since December. I had some leftover from when I had kidney stones previously, but then I ran out, and then I bought some new stuff that also has hydrangea and dandelion root in it, which are known also like these homeopathic type of things, right? But anyway, I think that I've been, once you have kidney stones, they say you're probably going to keep developing kidney stones. And I think I have passed some tiny kidney stones. Like, I believe they call them like system stones. And I'm not sure exactly, and I'm just going to do a quick check, and if it's worth looking at, I'll bring you in and show you this. What is a kidney system stone? That's what it said on my CTR. Kidney stones, blah, 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 are hard deposits made of minerals, diet, exercise, causes treatments, how do you move? Okay, no, it's not worth bringing you along because they're not giving us the answer. Anyway, in my CT scan that I had that basically discovered that I had gallstones, in that report, the printout report, I didn't physically see it, though I have the software and I was able to like kind of isolate that I do have kidney stones, but they weren't like huge, but they were almost maybe size smaller than a pea or something. I don't know. I think they're passable through those ducts. The ducts that they go through are a little bit bigger than you think. But anyway, I know you don't want to hear this, but we're talking about the human body as an android, as a robot. Who are we? What are we? And the fact that we're probably created somehow. And this doesn't go against any spiritualism, religion, of anything whatsoever. That's why I even mentioned, in other words, if it says, if you believe, you just want to go straight out of a Bible and say God created man in his image and likeness type of thing, that's fine. If you want to be into some Sumerian, Enki and all that kind of stuff, and, that they messed and created us, by messing with DNA and all that kind of stuff. Or if you want to be into some other kind of ancient aliens, the guy with the hair, or if you want to be into just something that, we hear, this Atlantis and Lemuria and all this other stuff, and that we came from different planets and settled in Atlantis and the various cataclysms and all that kind of stuff, that we're aliens or we're hybrids. You know what I mean? You could go down a rabbit hole on YouTube and you could find all kinds of people talking about everything, as well as go down just the rabbit hole of traditional religion. And the thing is, they're really not really disagreeing with each other. You see, because it's if you have an open mind, you would say, well, God is an alien, right? I mean, God is an extraterrestrial at the very least, right? Even the most, the person that's like the strict, adherence to the Bible is like they look up at God, and pray to the heavens and stuff. God is in heaven. So the point is, at the very least, God would be considered an extraterrestrial, right? Because the planet terrestrial, Terra, right? That's Earth. Right? So extraterrestrial, right? It's like kind of existential. And I'm not trying to make the light of this or be abusive to anything like that whatsoever. No, because the thing is, these are unknowables. Most people believe what they believe on faith, because it comes to a point when something is unknowable, right? You have no direct firsthand knowledge of it, right? Unless you're someone that God has spoken to, literally come down or sent an angel or something, right? You believe because of your faith. And in science, it's no different than us looking at trying to calculate pi, or talk about, or the Big Bang Theory, right? Even Einstein's theory, right? Or the same with evolution, the theory of evolution, right? We don't know, right? People just believe. So that's why a lot of science today is scientism, just like, you have, like it's like a religion. But there are certain things that are unknowable at this juncture in our existence, or at least what have been solved by, the leading theologians or physicists, astrophysicists, chemists, scientists, biologists, anthropologists, whatever you want to, whichever field of study or whatever area, that you specialize in, right? Or whether you're just a regular old person that just goes to church every Sunday and reads the Bible. So the Bible reads, is one way of reading the Bible, especially in Genesis and other things, and Enoch and stuff like that, that's very much reads like a sci-fi story almost. They came down from the sky, this, that, the other, blah, blah, blah. It's, it's pretty fascinating. It's pretty fascinating stuff. And most of the world's religions all have, some of them even get crazier in a sense. And again, I don't mean that in a mean or abusive way, but when you look at some of these Vedic texts and some of this other stuff where they actually talk about craft and, the gods flying around and, it's out there. So let's put all of that aside, whether let's put faith aside. Let's put the unknowable aside right now. Because if it's unknowable, I can't sit here and pretend to know it or give, answer some question, right? Propose some, I'm not going to, lie to you or fabricate a story the way a lot of these people do. What she shows, the narrator over top of these images they plop up, and they talk so matter-of-factually, like as if they know this thing. And so what happened, the such and such did this, and then they did that, and they did that. And I'm going like, you're talking about 6,000 years ago. You don't know. You weren't there, and there's nobody alive that was there, and there's no direct line of anything. And the tattered script, scrolls and scriptures or whatever we have left over, Dead Sea Scrolls or something, or these other religious writings from the East, are tattered, put together, and people have to translate them and, this, that, the other. So we don't know, firsthand, not even secondhand, third hand, fourth hand, or fifth hand. We take things on faith, and that's okay, right? There's a lot of stuff we take at faith. When you're in love with someone and someone looks into your eyes across a table, with a candlelight and a glass of wine or Mountain Dew, whatever your pleasure is, a cup of coffee, and they say they love you, and you say, I love you too. The point of the matter is both of you are taking that on faith, right? Person has professed their love for you, but the question is, do they really, in their heart of hearts, love you? Is it, blah, blah, blah. Of course, in these days, people are kind of afraid of the word love. It's one of the reasons why I like throwing it in shows, because it's, love is not a 4-letter word the way people try to portray it today. If there's a little more love in the world, it wouldn't be in such a turmoil that it's in right now. So let's forget about faith in a sense that what you believe in is what you believe in, and you have every right to believe in that. And if you believe you are absolutely correct and your faith is that strong and you are in that firm, I'm not going to go against it, and nowhere in this show am I going to try to sway you away from your faith. Okay? The unknowable is the unknowable. What you believe is what you believe. A case has been presented to you through science or religion in some way, shape, or form, and you have decided, just like the person tells you that they honestly love you, right? And you have taken that and you believe them wholeheartedly. And so you have that's faith, all right? That's how we're going to define it, at least for now. So, but what I'm looking at is saying, okay, no matter whether or not God created us in a sense of the biblical God, the God of Abraham, that, or whether or not there still exists, you see, there's levels of degrees of things. So even if you believed in the Sumerian tales, which there are so many different translations of that there isn't really one. But if you believe that, say, somewhere along the line these aliens came down and they needed to mine gold because their atmosphere needed it, and they took, and they experimented DNA with us and blah, blah, blah. Well, then it still goes to the point is that who created them? And so if you are somebody who's a religious person, you understand you can still say, well, God created, the people that came down that made the DNA, that messed with the DNA, that altered us. And, you see what I'm saying? And it's a continuum, right? Through up to and through the unknowable, which would be the theory, the Big Bang Theory, the singularity, which is unacceptable to most people, including myself, that there is a point of starting and, well, what happened before the point, right? So that in many, even people who are into like New Age spiritualism, have this idea of a God consciousness, that God is everything, or the cosmos, God is the universe, God is everything, we're all, right? The kingdom of God is within you, as above, so below. You've heard all these things. Everyone, you've heard this stuff, unless you've been living, totally isolating yourself from any kind of exposure to, any of these ideas. So the point being that I just want to, and I know I'm overstressing this, but I'm trying to avoid questions that people have in their minds or criticism someone may have, and I'm trying to let you rest assured that no, I am not in conflict with your personal belief system. Okay? I'm not trying to rattle your faith. Okay, that was why I was rather long-winded about that. Okay, you believe what you believe, and I accept what you believe, and I'd have no problem with what you believe. All right, what I want to talk about is somewhere, somewhere down the line, we were created somehow. It's however that chain of being is what I'm talking about today. All right? And having been operated on. In other words, I've had a radical prostatectomy. It's like an 8-hour operation. Imagine that. Imagine being on an operating table for 8 hours. And I've had these procedures, these kidney things. That's why I mentioned that stuff earlier. where I had this kidney stone that was so large that it had to be like blasted out of me or something in some way, shape, or form. And now I've got a problem with the gallbladder I'm trying to wrestle off. Okay? So I've known surgeons. I've spent a lot of time in and out of hospitals and talking with doctors and people like that. And I have this software called, I think it's called DivCom or I had to get it because I got this CT scan and my doctor said, well, I wouldn't know how to read that. All I wanted was my doctor to like pull it up on a screen and show me the stones so I know if they were like giant or small or dust or sand or whatever, if they're, because, they want to take the gallbladder out. So I ended up getting a copy of this software. Man, it's really hard to work and I barely could operate it, but it took me several days and I was at least able to get to a point where I believe I was able to isolate the gallbladder and see that, yeah, it looks like there's a bunch of stones in there. And then I did talk with I had my annual appointment coincidentally with the surgeon that did my radical prostatectomy, right? Cancer surgery. And while we were doing a video conference, video.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
Video appointment. A little too fast on the trigger finger there. And he pulled it up right while we were talking. I wish he could have showed it to me on the screen. And I didn't think to ask him, hey, could you like plop that on? But we were having audio problems. I ended up having to have him call me. We were able to see each other. So I don't know how computer literate he was in that regards. But be that as it may, he goes, yeah, there's stones there. So he saw it too. So the idea is, though, when you talk to surgeons and their approach to it, and you have to think of it, they have to be very clinical, in the pure sense of the word, because they're cutting open a human body, they're going in, and they're dealing with you as a robot, as a machine, an android, right? And they're looking inside you, and they see these devices. You remember in the 90s, the argument in school to be, to keep, it was, this goes to religion versus the atheists, in the school boards, that there was a discussion about intelligent design. And so the religious were trying to push the idea and say, well, you have to you can't teach this cold evolution idea and they had very strong arguments for intelligent design. Just things like the mitochondria and things, these motors inside these trillion cells in your body, and just how everything functions in such perfect, how well it's put together. It's amazing. The human body is very fascinating. And it's like I say, even the brain, our bioelectric brain is like a supercomputer. It just seems that to me from birth on up through this ridiculous long amount of period of time that they force children to be in school, is that they, at a very young age, when a child can go in a certain direction with their brain, that it's almost like they're capping it off. Don't think that way. Don't be, and the child that questions too much is the disobedient child. You see? Don't question that. Just, here, learn your lessons. Don't it's like, what is one of the things, everybody who's been around children have seen? A kid saying, why? Right? And then you give it an answer. But why? And then you give it another answer to that question, that why, and it goes, but why? Right? See, children are like, they have these, the brain's like a sponge. It just wants to know, and they've got all these questions. Well, why? And some of the whys are fantastical whys. And some of the things, and even a child, they say an infant, the way it sees and perceives the world until it, starts having more clarity or maybe more controlled or conditioning, that it's seeing things that, that someone who was taking LSD might see. But we're conditioning our children so that they could function and become productive members of society and live within the communities and the society, the civilization that we've built. Because if they were out there free form, not constrained or, channeled into a certain way of perceiving the world, all these things would get in the way and they would be unable to function. And there are probably people who are considered to be mentally ill that are just people that never really, that conditioning never stuck, and they might be seeing things that we all might be seeing or hearing things or whatever. And then, of course, we know about all these people that, like they taste sound and they, hear colors. There's all kinds of, there's a name for all of that stuff. And I'm not going to get into, this isn't that kind of scientific program. This is just Tony Caravan Live. All right. So back to the this bioelectric brain and this android body. And this, in this part might be somewhat troubling to some people. I still can't figure, you didn't notice this, but some lights, there's a weird reflection on my screen, which I can't point my finger on it because this is on the foreground. But if you follow this finger here, straight up to the top, near the top of the screen, it's almost like there's like a window with a light on or something. But it's not. It's some kind of weird reflection from in here. It's not a big deal. It's just weird. Always like that. Always trying to figure out what the heck that is. We had 40 to 60 mile an hour winds, by the way, in our area last night. Just to the east of us, I was listening to the NOAA radio before I went to sleep, and they were warning people near us to get in the center of the lowest portion in the center of their house, and that they could lose siding and roofs could fall off. And I'm thinking, man. But I almost was like thinking, that'd be great if my roof blew off or something, because I could probably put in a major insurance claim. The house would probably be declared, totally lost, and I could collect, because you're always insured for like rebuilding, so I could collect enough to just get out of this place and just buy another house with a roof that doesn't leak. I could always rebuild a garden, especially if I've got insurance money. But as far as I know, my roof's still there. Of course, I won't know until I go outside to see how many roof shingles blew off, which could mean I might have a lot more leaks and stuff. It was more windy than rainy last night, so I didn't have a true test of things. I mean, I had to empty the bucket once or twice before I laid down to go to sleep. Bucket of water. But as the night progressed, it was like more or less a wind, just crazy wind. So I'm sure things are blowing all over the place like crazy. But anyway, that's nature, and that's the planet we live on. So we're plopped on this planet, and we're somehow created in one way, shape, or form, or another. And, the question that some people will have problems with is the following. What if we just are robots left here? It's the classic line of Christ on the cross saying, "Father, why have you forsaken me?" Right? So even, the Son of God or God himself, right? The mystery of the Trinity, so to speak, even questioning that, in his final moments as a human, in human form, right? Why have you forsaken me? And the question is, not to go against, and I don't want to, this is, heresy or, to be, anything weird like that for anyone who is religious, take a strict religious viewpoint. I'm just this, from a religious standpoint, I want you to consider me as having a theological discussion. And for everyone else, this is someone, consider this a discussion of just ideas, philosophy, consciousness, questioning the hard problem of consciousness and things of that nature. Where does consciousness rise from? How is it there? Just, most scientists still have this problem. It's an unsolvable problem. It may be unknowable, but it may, maybe we'll figure it out. Who knows? But the idea is, it's profound. That, and I also find with this things in life so petty, as horrific as the current events that are going on. And if you watched yesterday's show, which could be taken in pretty much a depressing way, and even the show previous to that, where I spoke about, the fact that there's a couple 2,000 murders in the U.S. every week, and 40,000 people seem to die unnecessarily every week in the U.S., and how these various wars and other things that happen around the world pale in comparison to what's going on right here in the United States every week. But the fact is, our media doesn't show that. So when we see a missile going into an apartment building and stuff like that, then we are like affected, and people want to send all this money to those people. But no one seems to care about the families of the 2,000 people here that are murdered every week, or the 40,000 people that die unnecessarily, right? From diseases that are treatable, preventable, in some cases curable. There in fact, there have been no wars. If you just take if you just take 1 year, the last calendar year, more people have probably unnecessarily died, and died horrifically, painfully, tragically, with their families being affected here in the United States than anywhere that's been in the news or any war zone. Imagine that. And that includes Afghanistan and, stuff that went on in Syria and all that stuff. It's hard to believe because no one's talked about that. But nonetheless, those are CDC statistics. And governments, those are taken from government statistics, averaged out. Divided by 52, I get you a weekly figure. So, it's scary. But my mind is, so I don't really, so if someone says, well, I'm not interested in this, I'm interested in what's going on over there, and it's Putin, and, it's like, look, that's socioeconomic geopolitics, and I could give you an answer to that, at any given time. Because that's not complex. Socioeconomic geopolitics isn't complex because it's very old. War is very old. Humans have been going to war, since the beginning of time that, is recorded time. And their reasons are the same reasons, And in most cases, they're not justifiable reasons. They're not any reasons whatsoever. War is an insane act by insane people. All right? And the insanity exists on both sides. All right? Yes, in most cases, there usually is one perpetrator who begins it, right? a mad person, some megalomaniac or a dictator or whatever. Lunatic. Some power-hungry, crazed person. But be that as it may, there are always solutions, and it's up to the people to decide, right? So, in the religious context, it's turn the other cheek, it's compromise, it's diplomacy, it's, we don't need to build up. Why do we have so many nuclear weapons in the world? Why do we have build up armies? Why is there this jingoism right now from practically everybody saying, give them weapons, get in there, give them MiG jets, get in there, and blow them to smithereens, right? The movement should be, let's figure out some compromise here and figure a way of solving this problem. Do you see? That's the rational thing to do. All right. But we unfortunately are coming to a head, the end of our civilization now. All right. There is no, this person asking about the Tesla cars and the electric and stuff. It's like, it doesn't really matter because the power grid in order to feed these stations is falling apart. This country is in total disrepair. We have like I've said before, we have a reactive, policy, not proactive. The concept of Save America, Build Back Better, or Great Reset are all three of the same things, and none of them are realistic. You cannot take a country as large as this with 100-year-old sewer pipes, water pipes, and power grids and even gas lines, right? All the great restaurants, they like to cook with gas, the ruling elite. See, don't be so idealistic and think that the ruling elite never give up the things they like, right? And the great chefs of America are not going to want to be cooking on some, electric appliance. It's just not their game. It's not the way they do it. So, you have to broaden your mind and you have to be realistic and open to discussion, whether or not you don't have to believe a thing, because I'm not trying to make you believe a thing. I'm just trying to open your mind and prepare you for this discussion. We're already into it. Seems to me somewhere along the line, this body was intelligently designed. And we don't know by whom, how, or, or why. Right? See, you have to think of it this way. Even if you believed, if you were some kind of hard line, evolutionary type of person, crawled out of this slime, or, a cell, basically, single cell organism becoming a multi-cell organism, something along those lines. The idea is still, if you've ever seen that movie Prometheus, I think it was Prometheus, where they had this odd-looking character and he drank something, some black goo or something like that, and then, disintegrated and went into the water, and that was supposedly Earth, and that's what brought forth, humanity. Even if you're into something that's the sci-fi approach. The other approach is this: it just happened because, certain amino acids or certain chemistry, in water, and maybe some kind of lightning or some reaction happened, and a radiation mutation or something along that lines, and altered a thing, and then that thing was over millions of years and a billion, whatever, and you end up with what we have today. Or you have the Sistine Chapel, type of thing or something. But that's not the thing. The idea is that we have these complex bodies and this complex, and a complex brain. But, for some reason, and you have to admit it, you probably feel this way the same. You kind of sense yourself, the you of you, because this is what the hard problem of consciousness really is. You think of yourself in the first person, and somehow you kind of feel that is almost coming from somewhere above, right? And you might feel it's your head, your brain, but almost like even it could be above your brain, or like, or around that area. And then you've got this body underneath. It's like the person who's handicapped, who's, has no motor function or something like that. It's like they're this thinking being, person, human, intelligent, like, you could look at Stephen Hawking, for example. I mean, as the extreme example. I mean, his body was nothing to him. I mean, he had so little use of it. I mean, it was the ultimate tragic human existence. And yet he had this bioelectric brain that was, he was a genius. Some people could disagree with some of his theories and ideas, but nonetheless, no one can detract from the fact that he had many very good ideas and very intelligent papers written as well. It's like in any science, you can argue with people. Argument is healthy. It's what's missing from our society today. Today, we don't even allow ourselves to argue over petty issues. We censor and ban people because they say a thing, let alone the concept of, the true concept of science, where you really want to get, dig deep down into it. And that's what I'm trying to do here. And that's why this is such a long preface, into the whole idea, to assure people who have religious beliefs or scientific beliefs or any kind of beliefs or faith or whatever, that's not what we're about. Talk here. So this complex human being, you and me, exists. And when you talk to a surgeon, and I hope you never have to, I wouldn't wish that on anyone, okay? Because it's a nightmare, really is. What the heck? Do the sound effects.
This is a nightmare. It must be a nightmare.
And again, I always apologize for having to dip down there and drink the coffee. I know it kind of looks weird. That's what I'm doing when I'm dripping going down. So we have this consciousness, this soul, if you're like, the spiritual aspect to us. All right. That's what many people believe, right? Many people kind of, it's almost all, in some ways, a lot of that's all considered one thing. In other words, people may not follow a particular dogma, right? Or a certain, type of religion, but in a sense, those that believe in a soul consciousness, right? Conscious spiritual, a spiritual being, the idea of, spiritualism, it doesn't really matter, right? It's still the idea, it's the hard problem of consciousness. It's the idea that you are something that's more than this robot, this android body, right? You're more than your bioelectric brain. The bioelectric brain is a processing unit, right? A highly sophisticated computer. But the you is your individual, is your soul, your spirit, your consciousness. Right. Now the question is, what is that? Is that a part of the cosmos? Is that a part of God? Is it God consciousness? And is it a piece here within you, your soul, and then that soul returns to this oneness, right? As some people call it, or the cause, or all there is, which would be considered God, which would be everything, right? And if people have a problem with the word God, you can call everything, you could call it the cosmos, the universe, all there is, right? The unknowable. Because it all comes back to that. It's the unknowable. All right? In fact, let me type that in the chat just for the sake of it, The unknowable. All right? And so we don't know that. And it seems to me that the question then arises, and this is the challenge for the faithful, and also the challenge for the people who don't have faith in a religious standpoint or even a spiritual standpoint of any kind. And, and whether or not those who are hard scientific atheists, whether they want to admit it or not, it's still the question is that, so who are we, what are we, but where are we going? And, what happens to us when we die? And, people have answers for that. People who have religious beliefs have all kinds of answers from various religions. People who are spiritual have all kinds of answers. People talk about various planes of existence, dimensions, densities, all of this kind of thing. People talk about heaven. People talk about, becoming one with, the universe, one with. So, there's all sorts of things and ways of looking at this stuff, and it could just make your brain ache almost trying to wrap your head around it, so to speak. But those things are really unknowable. And, there comes a point where you have to, that's part of the acceptance of being a human being and being in this physical form. But it doesn't mean we can't ask those questions or ponder our existence, right? And throw out questions and wonder why, if there is a why, right? We see people acting the way they act, all this violence and militarism. It makes you wonder if that's directed in some way, or is that genetically inherited somehow? Why are there wars? Why do people fight? Why do people hate? Why do people argue? And I don't mean the petty stuff. I'm not talking about like some couple arguing over something or some family argument, over some goofy thing. No, I'm talking about the big stuff. The stuff that the media and the politicians and these generals and these dictators and presidents and people like that, the the big things people go to war over ultimately, or ban people or shun people or close their bank accounts, or do bad things because they don't get their way. In other words, the temper tantrums of adults, right? Isn't that what a war is? Is adults having a temper tantrum? Somebody not getting their own way and deciding to fight for it, right? Where is that come from? Where does that come from? Is that inherent in our species, or was it planted in there? Or is it being influenced? Are there forces, such as this demiurge, or, as the Gnostics believe, the archons? Are there outside forces doing this? Are there demonic forces, satanic forces pushing people? Are there alien forces? Right? Or are we programmed in such a way that we've inherited that DNA? Were we created, to hate? And it is it those of us who is it the battle to be able to eliminate hate, jealousy, anger, and all of that from our minds, our being, that is a purpose of existence here? Is that the trial, the trials and tribulations of being a human being, the suffering we go through? But is it ultimately that is the test of humanity, right? To see if we can break free of not the shackles of slavery and that sort of things that are creations of man, but whether we can break free of this divisiveness that's being constantly fed to us. And, they're putting on the full court press right now. They want to divide us over everything from, medical things to wars to the color of people's skin, to you name it, right? And it's all being pushed by like this gang, the media and political gang, right? The ruling elite class, right? And who, it's like one question asks, who are we? What are we? I asked the question, let's expand it. Who are they? What are they? Right? To do that. Why would they do such a thing? Right? Why can't they accept people on the other side? Well, that person is such and such. So what? Accept it. Are they in your face? Are they doing something to you? Why do you feel compelled to teach some child to hate? Based on something that somebody did 400 years ago that nobody alive today has any direct, involvement with. In fact, in most cases, a lot of this stuff was like done by groups, that aren't even really a big part of this country anymore. Dutch slave traders, and other, I don't even want to mention the other couple of groups that come from south of, that were involved in that kind of stuff, perpetrators and a party to that whole thing. But it wasn't really the vast majority of people who live in the U.S. and who migrated to the U.S. in the late 1800s and around the turn of the last century, far after any of those so-called evils and whatever occurred. And those immigrants that came in from Europe were treated just as bad, if not worse, because you had child labor or people working, slaving in the mines, the railroads, dying, dropping over, and they just bury them right on the spot and stuff like that. It was the same as working in fields. And that happened for a generation, you know. I mean, that was the beginning of the labor unions. I'm just touching that very, very lightly because that's not what this show is about. But I mean, who are we? What are we? But my question is, who are they? What are they? The people that are pushing this and dividing us. Because, you know, it doesn't matter whether a thing happened 400 years ago or 160 years ago or something like that. Okay? That's not today. That's not us. That's not who we are. Right? You see? And in most cases, it's like we don't even have any so-called skin in the game. Like we don't even have ancestors that were, you know, even party to that. Because, like I say, the vast majority of the population of the United States, you know, came post, you know, 20 years after the Civil War or more. You see what I mean? They just have just nothing to do with it. And then there was like a whole nother group of immigrants after the World Wars, particularly World War II. So, you know, they have, so that whole thing is ridiculous. And it's petty, and it pales in comparison to the real horrors. And the horrors are the fact that people commit murder, 2,000 murders approximately a week. And that 40,000 of us a week are dying needlessly of these, for the most part. Like I say, everything you know is wrong, generally speaking, but for the most part, die needlessly a week. There are no wars, okay? There's nothing happening over in Europe or Eastern Europe that comes close to what's going on right here in this country. You know, right here, right now, and has been going on here, right, you know, for decades. None of the Middle Eastern wars, not even the Vietnam War, you see what I mean, comes close to what's going on, what has transpired since the end of the Vietnam War. Let's put it that way. Okay? What's continued to occur here on our soil. This idea that we don't pay attention and we don't care about the health of our people, then the well-being and the safety and security of our people, and that we're watching our infrastructure fall apart and all of this stuff. And we are these, you know, incredible machines that were created in some way, okay? Who knows how, right? That's the unknowable part, okay? So it doesn't matter what you say. If you have an answer for that, that's good. And I say, okay, great. I'll accept your answer. All right? Whatever answer whoever's watching this says, I'm saying, okay, that's fine. But here we are. We were created by blank. What the heck are we doing? And why are we wasting, you know, these beautiful machines, these incredible machines, these incredible bodies? If you don't want to call it machines, if that offends you to being called a robot, an android, all right? If that's too clinical from a surgical standpoint. But we are complex, very intelligently designed, whether it was somehow designed in a natural way. But man, is nature's pretty far out. Okay? And it should be a humbling experience no matter how you look at it, that you are there and we are, you know, I am here and we are existing in this, you know, information age, technological age, right? But we're also on this beautiful planet that still has these beautiful sunrises, sunset, hills, valleys, waterfalls, lakes, rivers, oceans, right? And people, and the beauty of the other people we fall in love with, people we, you know, who are our friends, our family, right? And the architecture and the art that we create, right? You know, and so where's the focus on that? And so when you see the truth and beauty of life, all right, because that's what it boils down to. You know, we're living, right, like the other things on this planet. Why is everyone trying to attack one another, kill each other? And who and what are these people in the media and in the political arena, these so-called ruling elite, these megalomaniacs, narcissistic sociopaths and psychopaths that are trying to dictate to us how to live, who to like, who to not like, and trying to say, oh, this, you know, you know, because we believe in such and such a thing, we don't care if you know, if tens of millions of people freeze to death, we have to stop, you know, using organic fuels, which you call fossil fuels, but they're organic. They come from plants in the ground. And it's the U.S., and let's just face the facts. We have the best emissions policies in the world, okay? You know, we've got the cleanest air and water in the world, all right? There are plenty of countries out there that can't come even like, they don't even come like a fraction close to the standards that we already have in place, right? I go out in the morning, I feed birds in my backyard, and I take a deep breath of fresh air. They don't do that in a lot of places. They don't do that in China, all right? So everybody, we've got our minds like in a blender, you know, and I'm not the first person to say this, but up is down, and you know, right is, you know, is wrong, and you know, everything's just twisted and, you know, topsy-turvy. I never used that word before. But I mean, that's what it's like. But what I don't understand is how mesmerizing it is for most people out there, and how it's consuming their time and their life. It's the topic of conversation all over the internet, and people are just watching this in the news, and they're obsessed with these things. And there's no one out there. I mean, there are some people out there, but the people talking about diplomatic solutions, about peace, right? People who meditate or pray for peace and all that kind of stuff, their numbers are just so small compared to the 8 billion people on this planet. That's right, like 8 billion people. In this country alone, there's 330 million people. You know, 99% plus of the Americans did not die from that plague that has been in the headlines for the past couple of years. Over 99% of Americans did not die from it, won't die from it, and all that. But yet it seemed to occupy the entire, you know, it took all the oxygen out of the room, as they said, for the past 2 years, and ruined who knows how many lives. Do you see what I'm saying? It's the same thing with when people talk about certain kind of, you know, individuals that they point fingers at and say are, you know, they try to demonize a certain element and build them up as if there's a lot of them. But the fact of the matter is 99.9% of the population is not them. And you know who I mean by them. It's what these protesters and what these radicals are trying to say. Oh, they, right? But the fact is they represent such a small fraction of a percent. It's the same with the climate thing in the atmosphere. I say this all the time. The Earth's atmosphere is 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, okay, and 0.9% argon. So 99.9% of the Earth's atmosphere is nitrogen, oxygen, and argon. And CO2 is only 0.004%. It's considered a trace gas, along with methane and like water vapor. It's a trace gas. And the Earth's magnetic field is weakening the Atlantic belt conveyor that warms the north. And there have been many volcanoes going off due to solar activity and the magnetic problems. And the poles are shifting right now, the magnetic poles, south, north, and south poles, causing most of the changes in weather patterns, and will ultimately, due to solar activity, will be causing this planet to cool, and already has caused this planet to cool. But despite the fact that 99.9% of the Earth's atmosphere is nitrogen, oxygen, and argon, you wouldn't know that if you watched a major network or you heard a report from the UN IPCC. And they ignore the fact that there's this thing in the sky called the sun that basically is primarily responsible for the Earth's climate in many ways, more so than just heating. And that we, much like the plants, you have a form of photosynthesis. We're not taught that in school. It's not just vitamin D we get from the sun, and it's essential to our life and our immune systems and everything. But that it activates so many things within our body, exposure to the sun, just like it does within plants. So we are kind of solar robots, androids, solar-powered robots and androids. There some people could go so far to say that it is possible that, it's a big stretch, but that we can almost survive on the sun, and water, and the air, the air itself, but that's a whole different story. We know we could survive for at least a month on that. Many people have, unfortunately, or have been forced to, stranded some places. So anyway, that's the type of machine we are. That's the type of person we are. That's the type of being we are. That's the type of robot we are. Android, robot, whatever. Who are we? What are we? And which makes us wonder, are we programmable? And the answer is yes. No matter which way you look at it, if you're, these people, remember I was a creative director in an advertising agency. I was involved in a lot of other different things, but I was also involved in media and advertising. So I understand human behavior and the psychology that goes into influencing a person to do a thing, to purchase a thing, to kind of, turn their mind in a certain direction so that they want to think a certain way, so that they might want to be a certain type of person that would put them into a different demographic profile, as we call it, so that they would want to purchase such and such a product or service. And, in the school systems, you have all these administrators, and they have it's a lot of psychology, human behavioral psychology. And the idea there is I don't care if you want to accept this or not, but it's basically indoctrination and conditioning. And so, in effect, they're programming children from a very young age, from daycare on. At the most, when children are the most susceptible, probably when they really should be around their parents and true role models. But, the parents are forced, because we live in a society where this materialistic world where it is so commonplace. Well, in order to have that big house and that yard, so you with the sit-down mower and 2 SUVs, 3-car garage, and put your kids into college with these big student loans and all this other stuff, that, once you have a child, right after maternity leave, you put them into some kind of infant daycare, and then they're in daycare till they get into preschool, kindergarten, and then they go through this grade school process, and then they're in through high school. They come out of high school, and then it's student loan time, and they go and get some degree at college, and they come out. And they literally have no skills, and according to government agencies, there are reports out there that you could research yourself on government websites. The majority of people that come through the school system afterwards are still functionally illiterate. Functionally illiterate. I forget what the last time I looked at the numbers, there were some, 11 million jobs available that there's just nobody to take. But yet we have like a couple million immigrants came into the country last year just over the border and stuff, but they were uneducated and they're not qualified and they don't have the skills for those jobs either. But neither do the functionally illiterate people who went through our school systems who already were in the U.S. So it's almost we have these androids wandering around, that are like kind of brain wiped through the school system. Now, it's a funny thing. In the old, I was in radio. I was a general manager in radio, and I told you I started out in radio as a DJ when I was a senior in high school. I've been behind the microphone for a long time. And in the early days, we used to have a thing that looked like an 8-track. If you remember what an 8-track is, or if you saw a picture of an 8-track. And we called them carts. And what they used to be is it was a thing that just contained commercials. And you'd put this 8-track cart in a thing called a cart machine. That's what we called them. I think most stations called them that. And they were you had like rows of them. Some had like carousels of them. It depends on how big a market you're in. I know like some of the stations I worked in, we just had like three or 4 cart machines in a row. And there was like a kind of an inaudible signal at the end of it that would set off the next commercial. So, when you have a commercial break on a radio station or whatever, the commercial would come on and then the next one would play, then the next one would play, then the next one would play. And as soon as that's over, you'd come back on and, or there'd be some station ID or some kind of weird thing like that in there. Stinger, or whatever. Some goofy thing like,
Quality, quantity, and variety.
ROCKFLUX.
Let's get this show on the road.
And welcome back. That kind of thing. So when we used in your production room, you would get a commercial. We had this thing that you would hold, at least at the stations I worked, but like I worked at a couple different stations. They all had the same thing. It was kind of like this roundish thing with a button on it. And what it was an electronic magnet. All right. And you would take the cart in your hand and rub this thing around this cart, turn the cart over, rub it. And what it did was it was magnetic tape, and this was like an electromagnetic thing. And what you did was you wiped the tape clean. You erased the tape. And then you put it in the recorder, and then you recorded a new commercial, and those new commercials ended up in the carts. Okay? So it's like almost as if when kids go to school, preschool, infant daycare, preschool, kindergarten, right? Those very early years, right? After that, it's like, it's indoctrination after that. But it's like conditioning and messing with people's minds. But what they're doing is it's like they're putting this erasing the brain, any kinds of all the whys, right? All the thinking outside the box type of stuff and all that kind of stuff from people. And then once they've got this wiped clean brain, then they're like indoctrinating it with whatever they want. And then when they come out of school, then they propagandize them. They reinforce the indoctrination with this propaganda. Just keep at it so that they don't have a chance to even think. I say people go to school for far too long. I don't think people need to go to school for more than, 6 or 8 years. Unless you're going to be a doctor, and then you would go to medical school, or if some other profession that requires, several other years of really learning, a specific field of study that requires, complex book learning or hands-on work, such as a surgeon or, an engineer and things like that. But that the average person, if the school systems weren't wasting so much time on indoctrination and testing for government grant money and for teachers to get, raises and administrators to get some sort of, ideology into these poor kids' brains, if they were just taught, like they used to say, the 3 R's, right? And things about life and how to live and how to question things, and then given an option to learn a trade, a skill, which really, being a surgeon is just a skill or a trade, and that people were taught that way, that it's everybody's on an even playing field. No one's, remember the guy you went to high school with who becomes a congressman or a senator, suddenly, why is that person on a pedestal and considered higher than you? Right? Well, they had the exact same life, right? What's different? They have a title now? Do you see what I'm trying to say? So who are we? What are we? How do we develop this stuff? It seems as if there was some interaction and we're following or mimicking some sort of hierarchical structure, and by a warring people. This is my theory, so to speak. Thesis, I would guess, hypothesis. Because I can't find any other logical reason why. Because in a beautiful world, and when I think, like I say, I know, some people think I'm obsessed, but when I look at a beautiful woman, right? And I think of making love, with a beautiful woman in a beach house in a sunset with the sound of the surf in the background and a cool breeze coming through this bungalow, and hearing the rustle of the leaves in the trees or the palms, just behind the bungalow, and smelling the fresh air, and then having this feeling of ecstasy and the full sensory experience. And then I see these people holding signs with a cardboard box on the top and something crayoned or markered on top of it, and they're with angry faces and saying, you see what I mean? Or news media laughing, or like these late night comedians laughing at other people, poking fun at people, spewing hatred, or wars. And instead of people saying, okay, let's solve the thing, they just keep demonizing and demonizing, the individual that, did the thing. But doesn't question who, whether or not someone poked the hornet's nest or not. Not that would be an excuse, because there is no excuse for violence. But that the idea is question a thing, but solve a thing. And there should be the utmost priority of all people everywhere, all politicians, all media, and all of you should be diplomacy and peace, not demonization. You see, I don't know if Donald Trump really said he thought that they should put a Chinese flag on top of an airplane and bomb Russia or not. Okay? You know, because I can't believe anything you hear. But if he did, that should, anyone who follows him at all should just walk away, turn away from him completely. Do you see what I'm saying? That's just the type of thing we don't need in this world. And people, and I'm the first one to say, look, it's a dangerous world out there, and there's socioeconomic geopolitics at play everywhere. And we've got these horrible agencies like the alphabet agencies and bureaucrats in Washington that have secret armies and secret wars and are doing coups and assassinations. And in the corporate world, in the corporatocracy, it's the same thing, corporate espionage, assassinations, and stuff like that. Because they're talking about billions or trillions of dollars, and people are megalomaniacs, or people have greed and a hunger for power, right? But that doesn't mean you have to support them. So why do you? Who are we? What are we? That as a people we support this stuff. I personally don't. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm talking to you today. But as a people, you know, in general, who are we? What are we? That we would take sides, right? That we would view life this way. You see? And what is it? What is it in us, you know, genetically, or is it programmed? Is it indoctrinated? Is it propagandized? What is it that makes us watch Fox News, see MSNBC, CNN? I had to put a quarter in my jar. I just said the naughty word. Or ABC, NPR, whatever, the whole host of them. There's just far too many. Or these people on YouTube that just bring up the stories and the clips from those places, right? They're too unintelligent to actually do their own investigative reporting or come up with something on their own. So they just criticize other people. It's like these late night comedians. Life's a big joke, right? Let's just make fun of such and such, right? So who are we? What are we that we ended up this way as a civilization? Now, that's a question. That's the big question. You know? And, you know, you have to look yourself in the mirror and ask that question. Say, who am I? What am I doing? What am I thinking? Why am I accepting this? Why am I sitting here? Why was I, you're watching, you have your favorite television on and you're binge watching this stupid news show. Well, when you get up to go to the bathroom and you go into the bathroom and you're washing your hands and look at yourself in the mirror and say, what am I doing watching that? Why am I feeling a kinship? Why am I feeling like this is like some kind of team sport and I'm on blue team or red team, right? Or let's get the Rooskies, or let's do this. Right? Orange Man Bad, Dementia Joe, Where's Hunter? Let's go Brain. You see what I mean? You got to ask yourself the question, why are you like taking sides? Why are you demonizing somebody? Why are you caught up in this battle? Right? This battle of like, this side's bad, this person's bad, this whole group of people who have nothing to do with whatever you're talking about, but you're going to classify the whole lot of them as guilty of something that they don't even know what you're talking about. Or that 99.9% of the people are like, what? I never even seen anybody like that. You know what I mean, right? Because I personally haven't. I've never seen the things that are talked about, when they talk about these certain class of people that supposedly, it's like I've never seen a single one, and I've been in almost every state in the union, and I've traveled around rotated around this planet a few times. So I don't know what they're talking about. And like I told you, 99.9% of the atmosphere isn't CO2. And 99 it depends on which age group you look at, but something like 99.3 to 7% of the people in the U.S. didn't die from that thing that everybody was obsessing over for the past couple of years, and still are. You see what I mean? You have to look in the mirror and say, what am I doing? How did I get caught up in this? Right? And forget about, you have to like erase yourself from that, idea. You're just seeing the coal trucks go up that's what a Tesla vehicle runs on in these parts and in many parts of the country, coal country. So that's the thing. So you've got to go out in your backyard if you have one, or if you have a balcony, or wherever you could find some place where there's some trees, because you don't want to just do it out in the street necessarily, around traffic or something. But find some place, a park, and just take 3 deep breaths of fresh air, and clear your head for a second and say, what am I doing? Why do I feel this way? Why am I doing this? And why am I sending money to some fund that's going to buy somebody missiles to shoot at this other guy, however good or bad the person is, in most cases bad. When I should be contacting people, if I wanted to do something proactive, I should be just making a simple email. I don't have to lift the phone call. I should be just sending a simple email to my local congressman and senator or the White House and saying, please find a diplomatic solution. As a taxpayer and a citizen, I'm requesting that you find a diplomatic, peaceful solution to this. And that you don't buy oil from another dictator, or some regime in the Middle East that's caused the lives of so many people in this country. We want peace. You see? That's how you affect positive change. And some people say, well, you're being naive. The Chinese are about to attack Taiwan. There's things you can do. And sanctions aren't the answer. Making the people of a country suffer for, like I said, the first time anyone who allows any kind of war or any kind of thing like that to occur, it should be like the old days. They should be the first one. They should be the king on the horse and their knights. They should be in the front leading the charge. So let the president, and the people starting these wars, let them be in the front lines if they want to fight. And don't you support it. Don't go sending money for missiles and stuff like that. Because then you're guilty of killing a person. See, remember, the soldier on the other side is no more guiltier than the soldier on the so-called your side. Right? They're cannon fodder. Right? It's the generals and the dictators and the presidents that declare these wars, and these think tanks and these politicians and people in Congress. Right? And of course, they get their kids, their children out of it, Meanwhile, they all become multimillionaires and live the good life and everything. While the poor go out there and fight their wars so that they could have millions. Because war is about profit. They're all war-profiteers. So who are we? What are we that we've become? That we have evolved? And forget about the word evolution in the way you normally think of it. Okay. What have we become as a species, as a people? Right? I mean, we're acting like programmed robots. Programmable robots. And depending on which ideology we're exposed to, or what, look at this image on the screen, whatever wires we're hooked up to, see how there's wires going into the brain of that robot? Whatever we're hooked up to, then we seem to like that, we accept that programming, and then we're on that side, that team, and we adopt that ideology, and that becomes part of our being. And we watch a certain news station or certain vlogs, and we allow people to spew hate, and we may repeat that because it's not really hate if it's against a bad person. Well, yes, it is. Okay? Yes, it is. Because we don't want that. Well, that's not what truth and beauty is all about. That's not what this planet is about. We're basically placed on a frickin' Garden of Eden, man, if you really look at this place. All right? I told you, you look at my yard 2 years ago, all that green, that's my backyard. There's my little chair, and all those things are living, growing things, and those are herbs and fruits and vegetables and things like that. Okay? It's a frickin' Garden of Eden, and the air is really fresh there. On a sunny day, you could feel that vitamin D and that sun activating your things in your body all over, and you just feel good. Breathing fresh air, soaking up the sun, listening to some music. And then taking a colander I usually take and going and picking some fresh lettuce, some fresh kale, some chard, maybe a tomato, and some other things from my garden, and carrying it into the house, washing it off, and making myself a fresh salad I just picked. Looking at myself in the mirror with a little bit of color on my face that I got from the sun, not sunburn, but just looking healthy and eating a healthy, fresh food that I've grown myself. Had a good time listening to music, breathing fresh air and stuff. I mean, it's a Garden of Eden, man. That's what life could be like for all of us. But we don't focus on that. And what I'm trying to tell you is that 40,000 of us are dying in this country, the United States of America, or former United States of America. I don't know what it is now. It's unrecognizable to me. But 40,000 people a week are dying of illnesses that are either treatable, preventable, and in many cases curable. But even worse than that, 2,000 people a week are being murdered in this country, horribly. And that doesn't include the assaults, the rapes, and all the other things that happen every week. And just because you happen to live in a little development somewhere or someplace and you're not exposed to this right now, you think it's easy for you to just like take your credit card and send money so that those people over there can buy weapons, so they could kill other people. No. You go on the internet, you send 3 emails, 3 or 4 emails, one to your congressmen or congressmen, women, your senator, and to the president. And you say, as a taxpayer and citizen of this country, I would appreciate if you would immediately push for a diplomatic and peaceful end to this conflict today. If even 100,000 people did that, that would be overwhelming, because people don't do that. And what does it cost you? Nothing. Right? It's just an email. Just an email. You know? So, yeah, I'll ask that question again. Who are we? What are we? That we allow this to happen. And it's not just that war. Like I said, I'm more concerned about what's going on here. It's like I say about my own dealing with this gallbladder stuff and the other things. And I had cancer. Unnecessarily. No one seems to care about that. Right? Oh, there's research going on. We're going to find a cure for these things. We're going to cure it in you. They've been saying that since the 60s. There'll be a cure in your lifetime. Big Pharma doesn't want to cure anything. They just want to keep selling drugs or, injections. Big Ag doesn't want to make the food healthier. Right? They want put things in there to make it addictive, and they want GMO seeds that have pesticides like genetically modified in the seed, so they don't have to spray as much pesticides and get weeds in between the corn and all that stuff. All right? Big tech doesn't care about focusing on the quality of life for people. Right? They just want to sell more bright and shiny objects and make you think you need this, or create things to divert your attention away from things. Right? The military-industrial complex, the military contractors, well, they're war profiteers. They're in the business of war. So they want war. Because without wars, they don't have any income. All right? They have no income. And the central banks, they just want your money. The government just wants power. Politicians just want power, and they want to make money on this. They're war profiteers. They want to buy the stocks in the military contractors. And the media just want to keep their jobs. They're multimillionaires, these people who you watch on the media. They don't want to come out and say, hey, we need peace, or wait a second, why are we doing this? They don't want to lose their job. They're living in some really nice place down in Washington or New York or LA or some outside of the Beltway, right? I lived in all those places. I know what it's like. It's the good life. I lived on a top floor, penthouse floor in New York, in Midtown Manhattan. I lived in Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and I lived in Malibu and Beverly Hills in L.A. All right? I lived in Center City, Philly, in a nice apartment building and I was pretty high up so I could see the cityscape. To name a few, I also lived at the shore on East Coast and West. So I know what it's like. And when I was younger, I wouldn't have easily just walked away from a situation. Right? So those people, that's their thing. You have to understand. They don't want to get, that's what their motivation is, to maintain. Maybe they're in a relationship too, and they don't want to lose the relationship. Or they got kids, and the kids are in some great school. They don't want to lose all that. Do you see? That's how we got here. Do you see? And that's how the system has worked. But that doesn't mean, that's the way it has to be. But it seems that's the way it is, and it seems that nobody else is talking about this. Nobody's watching my show, and later on they won't. So this is the kind of stuff no one wants to hear. People don't want peace. They don't want to cure diseases. They just want to treat them and make money off it. They don't want to end wars. They want to keep funding them. And they want to show you, oh, look at these people who are dying or whatever, so let's support the other side, right? But what they don't tell you is that secretly these people are also selling weapons backhandedly to the other side. you ever see that movie with Nicolas Cage when he was like a, weapons dealer? Yeah. Believe me, Russia's not going to run out of weapons. Okay? But at the same time, we shouldn't be arming, that's just a recipe for war. NATO should be disbanded, man. The move should be to get rid of all nuclear weapons off this planet. And there should be some kind of device that big tech comes up with that detects these things right down to the, like within 1 meter or something like that, right? And like Tesla, instead of worrying about whatever, they should have satellites that can detect every nuclear weapon. And there should be a map of these things, and there should be this verifiable thing where everyone, and that's what the UN, should be involved in. Yeah. It's not going to happen. It's just like I started out with this idea of someone asking a question about Tesla, and this other person on the news media or whatever it was talking about, or no, the Department of Energy. Yeah, well, this is our way of transitioning into electric. And I'm going, where does electricity come from? How could some person be like the head of the Department of Energy and not understand that electricity has to come from somewhere, be created by a thing? I mean, even if you believe energy can come out of the ether, like the original Tesla, not Tesla as in the car. All right? The point is it still comes from somewhere. And currently, most of our electricity comes from natural gas. All right? Much of which had been fracked, and in many parts of the country, northern parts particularly, coal. And it's cold in the northern tier of the U.S. and into Canada and northern Europe. It requires heating. And we have people warehoused down south now in all of these retirement communities that require air conditioning. It's not like before where we used to have architects, that would design buildings that had flow of air through before air conditioning. Or like I say, even put storm shutters that weren't just there for, to make the house look, some design feature. They were actually storm shutters because there were frequent, storms came through there. See, people just don't see life. They don't really know history. They've been fed narratives. They've been brainwashed. They've been indoctrinated. They've been conditioned. They've been propagandized. Who are we? What are we? We're hooked up to a bunch of wires being programmed. We've been programmed. Meanwhile, the infrastructure in this country is beyond repair. Except where the elite live. I'm sure they'll take care of themselves. They don't care about us, though. I mean, I've done this many a time. All we are to them is this. We're cattle. We're cattle on their tax farm. Yeah. And if you're a soldier, you're nothing to them. You're just, like they say, what they used to call in the early wars, cannon fodder. Thank you for your service. You know what? They don't care about that. They don't care about service. It's all a big game to them. They're just in it. They're war-profiteers. They're in it for the money. It's socioeconomic geopolitics, but it's an out-of-control situation. And domestically, there are more people dying here at home than are dying abroad, and even died during the 20 years of those foreign wars in the Middle Eastern area. And people just don't understand that. And the thing is, they don't care. That's what I don't understand. So who are we? What are we that we don't care about that? That we don't care about our fellow man? Do you see what I mean? It's, I don't know. crazy.
This is insane.
So I don't know what to say other than what I did say. And I could get more into the idea, the technical aspects of, we're robots and machines and stuff like that. But I mean, look at this picture, this graphic. Take that in. And yeah, man. Something weird's going on, right? Whatever it is, it's weird and it's freaky. And I don't care if you're religious, if you're New Age spiritual, or if you're just someone dealing with the hard problem of consciousness, right? I don't care what your approach to this is, where your mind's at, your head's at, as they say, Forget the bioelectric brain portion. But, it's just not right. We don't seem to fit in with nature right now. What's going on? I'm talking about the beauty of nature, truth and beauty. The trees, the blue sky, right? The sunrise, the sunset, the sound of the surf, the rolling fields, the rain, a soft summer rain, the wind through, rustling through a breeze, a gentle breeze, walking barefoot on a beach, jumping into a lake, swimming in clear, clean water, under a waterfall. Do you see the beauty of nature and us being there, and then the beauty of sharing that with another human being, whether or not you're in love or making love, just walking with a friend, conversing, all that stuff. You see, there's that whole side of life that's just being ignored. And they're trying to divert you away from that reality. But that's the world. That's the world we live in. That's the world. That's who we are. That's what we are. But they're trying to tell us we're something else. And you're falling for it. And you need to look in the mirror or look out the door or look and see. And they want to put like windmills and hide those landscapes, beautiful rolling hills landscapes. And those windmills just like die after so many years. And then they're just like these weird obelisks, like just destroying a landscape or an ocean, or like out in the ocean, or the solar farms. It's like these people are sick. And then they want to wage wars. And then they want to lock people up instead of letting them, photosynthesize under the sun and boost their immune system and breathe fresh air, right? Put this over your face. Don't do this. Don't go there. Don't stay inside. Be afraid. Be afraid of everything. See what I mean? Something's fishy going on, man. They're programming people, and it's like, I'm immune to it. And that's why they've got me locked out, right? They don't let people watch my shows. I mean, it's ridiculous. There's no explanation. I've had so many people who I've talked to about this, and I'm not going to waste time on it. But, you've got to wake up and share this video or share these ideas. And who cares? And I'm not monetized. The thing I have in the back is just a joke. It says presented to Tony Caravan Live for exceeding the number 3 views. It's a joke. It's an art piece. Anyway.
Good morning.
Have a great day. I wish you the best of luck. My site is ROCKFLUX.com. It's not some great website. All it is basically a collection of links to all the things I've done. So it links to the websites where you could find my videos. It links to where you could get my books. I recommend the printed versions. It links to my store where you could get the slogans that I have, like you don't know what you don't know and everything you know is wrong, or the ROCKFLUX.com logo, or game over. There's a link there to greatsolarstuff.com where you can get power backup because our grid is failing, man. Like I said, I'm not monetized, and even on these things themselves, nobody's really buying this stuff. But even if they do, I'm lucky if I make 50 cents here or there if they do. But it would help. It would help. And it would show that you supported what I'm saying and cared. So I would appreciate it. So take care, and I hope you have a great day. Cheers.